The alarm systems across the times, cosmic harmony times, screamed their warnings into the cold silence of space. Captain Heijin stood on the bridge, her dark eyes scanning the distress signal that had just appeared on their screens. It came from a Velgrim military transport, and the message was urgent. "Captain, should we respond?" asked Doyun from his station at the engineering console. He was a careful man, always thinking about risks before rewards. Heijin nodded. "Open a channel." The screen flickered to life, showing a reptilian face with scales that shimmered like oil on water. Commander Vextral of the Velgrim military looked exhausted, which was unusual for his species. They were known across the galaxy for their discipline and strength. "Captain Heijin, we require immediate assistance. We have a situation that we cannot control." The commander's voice was tight with stress. "What kind of situation?" Heijin asked. "Our primary Warbeast has become uncontrollable. It has killed 2 of our handlers and injured 5 more. We cannot approach it. We cannot sedate it. The creature will die if we do not find a solution soon, and we would prefer not to destroy such a valuable asset." Heijin leaned forward. "What happened to it?" "The neural implant was damaged in our last battle. Without the control link, the creature has reverted to its base nature. It is nothing but rage and fear now." Doyun turned to look at his captain with concern on his face. "Captain, we're a research vessel, not equipped for this kind of—" "We have a xenobiologist on board," Heijin interrupted. "Taeyang might be able to help." Vextral's eyes narrowed with doubt. "A human? Our best handlers could not manage this creature. What makes you think one of your kind could succeed where we have failed?" "Because Taeyang doesn't think like a Velgrim handler," Heijin said simply. "Give us permission to dock. We'll see what we can do." 20 minutes later, Taeyang stood in the observation room, looking through the reinforced glass at the creature contained within. Kova was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. The Warbeast was roughly the size of an earth bear. But that was where the similarities ended. 6 powerful legs supported its muscular body, each ending in retractable claws that had scored deep marks into the metal floor. Its fur was long and silvery blue, shimmering with patterns of bioluminescence that flickered and changed like a mood ring made of starlight. Down the creature's spine ran a magnificent mane of flowing fur that seemed to move even when the creature stood still. Right now, that fur stood on end, making Kova look even larger and more dangerous. The creature paced back and forth, in the same pattern it had probably walked 1,000 times already. Its eyes were golden, with vertical pupils, and they tracked every movement outside the containment field with predatory focus. "Beautiful," Taeyang whispered. Vextral, who had accompanied them aboard, made a sound of disbelief. "Beautiful? That creature is a killing machine. It was bred over 300 generations to be the perfect soldier, obedient, lethal, and loyal. Now it is none of those things." Taeyang didn't look away from Kova. "How did you make it obedient?" "Through the neural implant. It connects directly to the creature's brain, allowing handlers to send commands and suppress unwanted behaviors. Pain compliance when necessary." Now Taeyang did turn to look at the Velgrim commander. His face remained calm, but his voice was quiet when he spoke. "You tortured it into submission." Vextral's scales rippled with irritation. "Is there?" Taeyang turned back to watch Kova. The creature had stopped pacing and was now scratching at its neck with a hind leg, just below where Taeyang could see the damaged implant jutting from the fur. The area around the device was matted with dried blood and tangled fur. Captain Heijin stepped closer to the glass. "Maybe. But first I need to understand what I'm looking at." He turned to Vextral. "Tell me about Kova's species. Where do they come from? How do they live in the wild?" Vextral seemed confused by the question. "They come from the forests of Velthar, but they have not lived in the wild for centuries. We domesticated them long ago." "Domesticated or enslaved?" Taeyang asked. "Does it matter? The result is the same. They serve us in war, and in exchange, their species survives." Taeyang watched as Kova returned to pacing. But this time, the creature moved closer to the glass. Those golden eyes fixed on him, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. Taeyang saw something in that gaze that the Velgrim seemed to have missed entirely. It wasn't just rage. It was pain. It was fear. It was a desperate plea for help that the creature couldn't put into words. "She's not aggressive," Taeyang said softly. "She's terrified." "It killed 2 handlers," Vextral reminded him. "She's protecting herself. Look at how she moves. She's favoring her right side. The implant isn't just damaged. It's causing her constant pain, and her fur is matted around it, pulling on her skin. Every movement probably hurts." Doyun, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Even if you're right, what can you do about it? You can't exactly walk in there and give it a bath." Taeyang smiled slightly. "Why not?" Everyone in the room turned to stare at him. "You cannot be serious," Vextral said. "That creature would tear you apart in seconds. Maybe. Or maybe she's just waiting for someone to help her instead of hurt her." Taeyang looked at his captain. "I'd like to try." Heijin crossed her arms. "Explain your plan first." "I don't have much of a plan," Taeyang admitted. "I want to enter the containment area without weapons. I'll sit down, stay calm, and see if she'll approach me. If she does, I'll see if she'll let me examine her injuries." "That is suicide," Vextral stated flatly. Taeyang shrugged. "On Earth, my family raised animals. Dogs, horses, even a wolf that had been injured and needed rehabilitation. I learned something important from all of them. Fear and aggression usually come from pain or past trauma. If you want to help an animal, you have to be patient. You have to let them come to you on their terms, not yours." "Kova is not some Earth pet," Vextral said. "She is a weapon. She's a living being," Taeyang corrected gently. "And right now, she's suffering. I can see it in her eyes, in the way she moves. The Velgrim method didn't work. Maybe it's time to try something different." Captain Heijin studied her crew member carefully. She had known Taeyang for 3 years now. He was quiet, thoughtful, and gentle with every creature they encountered on their missions. He had a gift for understanding alien species that sometimes seemed almost magical. But this was different. This was dangerous. "If I allow this," she said slowly, "you'll have a full medical team standing by. At the first sign of real danger, we pull you out. Understood? Bull, 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 bull." Taeyang nodded. "Understood." Vextral looked between the 2 humans as if they had both lost their minds. "I will note in my official report that I advised against this course of action." "Noted," Heijin said. Taeyang took a deep breath and moved toward the containment entrance. His heart was beating fast, but his hands were steady. Through the glass, Kova watched him with those intense golden eyes. The creature's bioluminescent patterns shifted from angry reds and oranges to something closer to yellow. Curious, maybe. Or cautious. "Here we go," Taeyang whispered to himself, and he stepped through the door into the unknown. Kale was magnificent. That was the only word Hana could think of as she stared through the thick observation window. The creature was roughly the size of the lions she had seen in pictures from Earth, but that was where the similarity ended. His body was covered in fur that seemed to shimmer and shift, catching light in ways that made him look almost unreal. But the most amazing thing was his mane. It glowed. The thick fur around his neck and head pulsed with light, shifting through colors like a living rainbow. Right now, it burned with deep red and orange, the colors flickering and dancing like flames. The light cast strange shadows across his face, highlighting features that were both beautiful and deadly. His eyes were gold, bright as molten metal, and they tracked everything in the cell with intense focus. "Why is he glowing?" Hana whispered. "Bioluminescence," her mother answered softly. "His body produces light, Naturally. Scientists believe the colors communicate his emotional state, but no one has been able to study star lions long enough to create a reliable color chart. They're too dangerous. A being next to them, covered in thick gray fur and standing on 4 legs, snorted. Too dangerous is an understatement. I'm Warden Thex. I run this facility. He held up his right arm, or what remained of it. It ended at the elbow in a mechanical prosthetic. Lost the rest to a star lion 15 years ago. Different animal, same species. I was lucky. My partner wasn't. Hana looked at the warden with wide eyes. It ate your arm? Took it clean off with one swipe, Thex said. His voice was matter of fact, but Hana could hear the old pain beneath it. Star lions come from Kethril, a death world in the outer rim. Everything about that planet is designed to kill you. The gravity is 3 times what you're feeling right now. The atmosphere is toxic to most species. The temperature swings from boiling to freezing in hours. And the life forms? He shook his head. Every single creature on Kethril is either an apex predator or something that evolved to avoid being eaten by apex predators. Then how does anything survive? Hana asked. By being tougher, meaner, and more adaptable than anything else, Thex said. Star lions sit at the top of that food chain. They hunt in electromagnetic storms. They can go weeks without food. They're strong enough to tear through most materials. And they're intelligent. Dangerously intelligent. This one figured out how to partially disable the cargo ship's life support to force the crew to open the doors. In the cell, Kale stopped pacing. He turned his massive head toward the observation window, toward the gathered crowd of aliens watching him. His golden eyes seemed to look at each of them, one by one. When his gaze passed over Hana, she felt a shiver run through her entire body. Those eyes held an intelligence that was unmistakable. This wasn't just an animal. This was a thinking, feeling being. Why did they bring him here? Dr. Yuna asked. Research, Thex said. The Galactic Scientific Council wants to study apex predators from death worlds. They think understanding these creatures might help us develop better survival strategies for colony worlds. This star lion was captured using long-range sedation drones, and a lot of luck. Cost 3 million credits and 5 lives just to get him off planet. That's horrible, Hana said. He didn't ask to be taken from his home. Thex looked at her with something that might have been surprise. No. He didn't. But that's how the galaxy works. Little human. The strong take what they want. The weak suffer. That's not how it should work, Hana said firmly. Before anyone could respond, an alarm blared through the facility. Red lights began flashing along the walls. Thex's head snapped up, his ears swiveling toward the sound. What's happening? Dr. Yuna asked, pulling Hana closer. Containment breach, Thex said, already moving toward a communication panel. Not this cell. Somewhere else in the facility. Everyone stay calm and stay where you are. But calm was not what happened. The crowd of observers began pushing and shoving, everyone trying to move away from the holding cells. In the confusion, someone's child, a small creature with blue skin and too many arms, stumbled against the wall. Its hand slapped against a control panel. Hana heard a sound like electricity crackling. She looked at Kale's cell and saw the energy fields flicker. They flashed once, twice, then went dark for just a moment before humming back to life. But that moment was enough. The physical barriers were designed to work with the energy fields. With the fields down, even for 3 seconds, the magnetic locks disengaged. The reinforced door to Kale's cell slid open, just a crack. Kale didn't hesitate. He moved like liquid lightning, his powerful body slamming into the door. The metal shrieked as it bent. The backup systems kicked in, but too late. The gap was wide enough. KL squeezed through, his bioluminescent mane blazing bright red as he burst into the observation corridor. Chaos erupted. Aliens screamed and ran in every direction. Thex, was shouting into his communicator, calling for security teams. The alarm changed pitch, becoming more urgent. Blast doors began slamming down throughout the facility, automatically isolating sections to contain the threat. Dr. Yuna grabbed Hana's hand and ran. They sprinted down the corridor with dozens of other panicking beings. Hana looked back over her shoulder and saw KL standing in the middle of the hallway. His mane was brilliant red and orange, colors that pulsed like a heartbeat. He turned his head, surveying all the running prey, and Hana saw his muscles bunch. He was going to chase them. "Mom!" Hana yelled. A blast door dropped from the ceiling, slamming down between them. Dr. Yuna was on one side, pulled along by the fleeing crowd. Hana was on the other side, frozen in place, her hand reaching toward where her mother had been. "Hana!" Dr. Yuna's voice came through a speaker in the wall. "Baby, stay calm. Don't move. Security is coming." But Hana wasn't alone in this section. There were maybe 10 other beings with her, all pressed against the walls or huddled in corners. Most of them were species she didn't recognize. They were all completely silent, frozen by fear so deep it overrode even the instinct to run. She could hear Kale moving. His claws clicked against the metal floor. The sound echoed in the corridor, getting closer. Hana's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to do something. But she remembered what her mother had taught her about wild animals. Running triggers the chase response. Sudden movements mean you're prey. The best thing to do is stay calm, stay still, and show you're not a threat. Of course, her mother had been talking about wolves and bears, not alien apex predators from death worlds. Kale rounded the corner. In the confined corridor, he looked even bigger than he had in the cell. His mane cast red and orange light across the walls, making everything look like it was on fire. His golden eyes swept over the huddled aliens, and his lips pulled back slightly, revealing teeth that looked like they were made of crystal. They gleamed sharp and deadly in the bioluminescent glow. One of the aliens, a thin creature with too many legs, made a high-pitched noise of pure terror. The sound triggered something in Kale. His head snapped toward the movement. His mane flared brighter, his haunches tensed, and then the alien ran. It skittered down the corridor on its multiple legs, driven by panic. Several others broke at the same time, their fear overcoming their sense. They scattered like leaves in wind, each one trying to find safety. Kale's predator instinct kicked in. Hana could see it happen. His eyes locked onto the running prey. His muscles coiled. He prepared to pounce. But before he could move, Hana stepped forward. She didn't plan it. She didn't think about it. She just knew that if Kale started chasing, started hunting, people were going to die. And maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was the stupidest thing she had ever done. But she couldn't just stand there and watch. "Hey," she said. Her voice came out small and shaky, but it was enough. Kale's head swiveled toward her. "Hey, it's okay. Nobody needs to get hurt." The Star Lion focused on her completely. His mane shifted, the colors cycling from red to orange to yellow. His golden eyes studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He took a step toward her, then another. Each movement was deliberate, controlled, the movement of a predator who knew exactly what it was doing. Hana could hear her mother's voice through the speakers in the wall, desperate and afraid. "Hana, don't move. Please, baby, just stay still." She could hear other voices too, deeper ones, probably security forces preparing to storm the corridor. Someone was arguing about whether to use weapons or gas. Another voice was saying that any aggressive action might set the Star Lion off, might trigger a killing frenzy. But Hana focused on Kael. She met his golden eyes and did something her father had taught her. When you're scared, but need to be brave, control your breathing. Make it slow and steady. It helps you think clearly. And it helps others see you're calm. She breathed in slowly through her nose, out through her mouth, In. Out. Her heart was still racing, but her hands stopped shaking. KL was close now, just a few meters away. This close, she could see details. The way his fur caught the light, the crystalline structure of his fangs, the intelligence in those golden eyes, sharp and aware. His mane continued to shift colors, moving from yellow to something she hadn't seen before. A pale blue, soft, and almost hesitant. "You're not mean," Hana said softly. "You're just scared. They took you from your home, put you in a cage. That must have been so scary." Kale tilted his head slightly, as if trying to understand. His mane flickered, blue mixing with green now. Hana's legs felt like they might give out beneath her, but she kept standing. Kael was so close now that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. The air around him seemed to shimmer, charged with some kind of energy she didn't understand. His breath smelled strange, like metal mixed with something sharp and clean, like the smell after lightning strikes. Behind her, she could hear frantic voices through the communication system. Her father was there now. She recognized his voice even through the distortion. He was begging someone to do something, to save his daughter. Her mother was crying. Security forces were arguing about the best approach. Everyone was talking at once, and none of it helped. Kale's mane had settled into that soft blue color with streaks of green running through it. The light was gentler now, not the angry red and orange from before. His eyes never left hers. They stared at each other. Human child and alien predator, separated by less than 2 meters and an impossible gulf of evolution. "I know you understand me," Hana said quietly. "Maybe not the words, but the feeling. I'm not going to hurt you. I can't hurt you. I'm too small, and you're too strong. But I'm not running either, because I think you're tired of everyone being afraid of you." The star lion made a sound. It was low and rumbling, starting deep in his chest. It vibrated through the air, and Hana felt it in her bones. It wasn't a growl exactly. It was something else. Something she had never heard any animal make before. It sounded almost like sadness. Through the speakers, someone was counting down. "Breach team, in position, in 30 seconds. Loading tranquilizer rounds. If the creature makes any aggressive move toward the child, we fire immediately." "No." Dr. Yuna's voice was sharp. "You saw what happened when the handlers tried to tranquilize him on the cargo ship. He killed 2 of them before the drugs took effect. If you shoot him while he's this close to Hana, he'll have time to." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Everyone knew what could happen. A star lion could kill a human child in less than a second, even while dying. Hana swallowed hard. Her mouth was dry and her hands were shaking again, but she kept her eyes on Kale. "Please don't hurt me," she whispered. "I don't want them to hurt you either." Very slowly, moving like she was underwater, Hana lowered herself to the ground. She sat cross-legged on the cold metal floor, making herself smaller, less threatening. It was something she had learned from her mother's work. When approaching nervous animals, make yourself seem small and unthreatening. Move slowly. Let them come to you. Of course, her mother's work had been with earth animals, species that humans had lived alongside for thousands of years. Not apex predators from death worlds that had never seen a human before. But Hana didn't know what else to do. Kale watched her sit. His head tilted again, that curious gesture that made him look almost like a confused dog. If dogs were massive, deadly predators with glowing manes. He took another step closer. His paw was huge, bigger than Hana's whole head, tipped with claws that looked sharp enough to cut through metal. He placed it on the ground just centimeters from her knee. "Breach in 15 seconds, the voice said over the speakers. "Child, if you can hear me, close your eyes and cover your head. We're coming in." Hana ignored them. She kept her eyes on KL. Tears were rolling down her cheeks now, hot and fast. She was terrified, more scared than she had ever been in her whole life. But mixed in with the fear was something else. A strange kind of calm. A feeling that this moment mattered in ways she couldn't understand. "You're beautiful," she said, her voice breaking. "Did anyone ever tell you that? You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Kale lowered his massive head. His mane was glowing softly now, pale blue and green mixing together in gentle waves. He brought his face close to hers, so close that his whiskers nearly touched her cheek, and then he did something that made everyone watching through the security cameras gasp. He sniffed her. It was gentle, almost delicate. His nostrils flared as he took in her scent. Hana held perfectly still, barely breathing. She could see every detail of his face now, the way his fur grew in patterns like waves, the flecks of silver in his golden eyes, the small scar above his left eye, probably from some fight on his home world. 10 seconds, preparing to breach. Kale made that sound again, that low rumbling that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him. But this time it was different. Softer. Almost gentle. His mane shifted to pure green, a color like new grass, like the first leaves of spring. And then, he did something that no star lion in recorded history had ever done. He lay down, not in a crouch, ready to pounce. Not in an aggressive posture. He simply lowered his huge body to the floor, folding his legs beneath him in a position of complete relaxation. And then, slowly, carefully, he rested his enormous head across Hana's lap. The weight was significant. Hana's legs pressed against the floor under the pressure. But it wasn't painful. Kale's head was warm, and his mane continued to glow that soft green color, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Breach in 5, 4, 3. Stop! That was Warden Thex's voice, sharp and commanding. Everyone, stop. Stand down. Do not breach that corridor. But sir, the child is safer right now than she would be if you storm in there. Thex said, I've studied these creatures for 20 years. I've never seen one behave like this. Something is happening here. Something important. If we interrupt it, if we startle that animal, the child dies. But right now, in this moment, she's alive. And that star lion is calm, so everyone stays put and watches. That's an order. Hana sat very still, afraid that any movement might break whatever spell had been cast. Kale's breathing was slow and steady. She could feel the rise and fall of his chest, feel the vibration of that deep rumbling sound he made. Very carefully, moving so slowly that it took almost a minute, Hana raised one hand. She held it above Kale's head, hovering there, giving him time to react. When he didn't move, didn't show any aggression, she lowered her hand and touched his mane. The fur was not like anything she had felt before. It was soft, but also seemed to have some kind of structure to it. Almost crystalline. It was warm, and the bioluminescence made her hand glow green. As she touched it, she felt a very gentle vibration, like electricity, but not painful. Just a tingle against her palm. It's okay, she whispered, stroking his mane gently. You're okay now. I've got you. Through the speakers, she could hear people talking in hushed, awed voices. Her mother was crying, but they sounded like tears of relief now. Her father was asking if it was safe to open the door, and Warden Thex was saying, not yet, give it time, let's see what happens. Scientists were already analyzing every second of footage, trying to understand what they were witnessing. In dozens of languages across the station, people were asking the same questions. How was this possible? Star lions didn't bond. They didn't submit. They didn't show affection. They were pure predators, driven by instinct and aggression. But Kael lay with his head in a human child's lap, his mane glowing peaceful green, making that soft rumbling sound. You were so alone, Hana said softly, continuing to stroke his head. Nobody tried to be your friend. They just saw a scary monster. But you're not a monster. You're just far from home. Kale's eyes drifted closed. His breathing deepened. And impossible as it seemed, the deadly apex predator from Kethral, the unkillable star lion that had torn through cargo ships and killed trained handlers, fell asleep with his head on a little girl's lap. Hana kept stroking his mane, tears still running down her face. But she was smiling now. A small, tired smile. Her legs were going numb from the weight. And her heart was still beating too fast. And she had no idea what would happen next. But in this moment, she had done something impossible. She had made a friend. 20 minutes passed. It felt like hours to Hana. Her legs lost all feeling below the knees. Her back started to hurt from sitting so still. But she didn't complain. She just kept petting KL. Kept humming the lullaby her mother had sung to her when she was smaller. Finally, her mother's voice came through the speakers, very soft and careful. Hana, sweetie, can you hear me? Yes, Mom, Hana whispered back. You're so brave, baby. I'm so proud of you. Do you think you can stand up? I don't know, Hana said honestly. My legs are asleep, and I don't want to wake him up. I know, sweetie. But we need to get you out of there safely. Very slowly, try to move. If he wakes up and seems upset, freeze immediately. Okay? Okay. Hana stopped petting Kale's head. She waited to see if he would react. His breathing stayed steady, deep, and slow. Her legs were completely numb and full of pins and needles. It hurt, but she bit her lip to keep from making noise. Kale stirred. His eyes opened slightly, those golden orbs focusing on her. His mane flickered from green to yellow. Hana froze. They looked at each other. Kale made a soft sound, almost questioning. Then, to her amazement, he lifted his head from her lap. He stood up, stretched like a cat, his huge body arching. His mane cycled through colors, settling back on that peaceful blue-green. Hana tried to stand and immediately stumbled. Her legs wouldn't work properly. She was going to fall. Before she could hit the ground, Kale moved. He pressed his body against her side, supporting her weight. His fur was warm and solid. He held still while Hana caught her balance, using him like a wall to lean against. Thank you, she whispered. She took a careful step forward, toward where she knew the blast door was, where her mother waited on the other side. Kale moved with her. He walked beside her, matching her slow pace, his body brushing against hers. His mane glowed softly, lighting their way. When they reached the blast door, Hana reached out and touched the cold metal. Mom, I'm here. We're opening the door very slowly, Dr. Yuna said. Just a crack at first. Security teams are ready, but they won't do anything unless necessary. Can you come through? The door began to rise with a mechanical whine. A gap appeared at the bottom, growing wider. Hana could see her mother's legs, then her body, then her face. Dr. Yuna was on her knees, arms reaching out. Hana started to move forward, then stopped. She turned to look at Kale. The star lion stood there, his head tilted in that curious way. His mane flickered yellow and blue, colors mixing. Will you come with me? Hana asked. Please. I don't want you to be alone anymore. For a long moment, Kale just looked at her. Then he stepped forward. Slowly, cautiously, the deadly predator walked toward the opening door, toward the dozens of armed security officers and terrified scientists waiting on the other side. But he didn't look at them. His golden eyes stayed fixed on Hana, on the small human child who had seen him not as a monster, but as someone who needed a friend. The blast door opened fully, and Hana stumbled through into her mother's arms. Dr. Yuna wrapped around her daughter, holding her so tight that Hana could barely breathe. She was crying and laughing at the same time, her whole body shaking with relief. Never again, Dr. Yuna whispered fiercely. Never, never again. You don't leave my sight for a second. Behind them, Kale stepped through the doorway. Every weapon in the corridor immediately tracked to him. Dozens of security officers stood in formation, their plasma rifles charged and ready. More beings lined the walls, scientists and officials and curious onlookers who had heard about the impossible thing that had just happened. Kale's mane flared red for just a moment, responding to the threat. His lips pulled back, showing those crystal fangs. A low growl rumbled from his chest. "Don't!" Hana pulled away from her mother and turned to face the security team. "Don't point weapons at him! You're scaring him!" "That thing is dangerous," one of the officers said. He was a tall being covered in blue scales, his rifle aimed steadily at Kale's head. "It's killed multiple beings. It needs to be contained." "He was scared and alone," Hana said. "You would fight too if someone put you in a cage." Warden Thex pushed through the crowd. His mechanical arm whirred softly as he moved. He looked at Kale, then at Hana, then back at the Star Lion. His expression was unreadable. "Lower your weapons," he said quietly. "Sir, that's not protocol." "I said lower them." Thex's voice was firm. "That's an order." Now, slowly, reluctantly, the officers lowered their rifles. Not all the way down, but enough that they weren't directly aimed at Kale anymore. The Star Lion's mane shifted back to blue and green, the aggressive red fading away. His stance relaxed slightly, though he remained alert. "What you just witnessed," Thex said, addressing the gathered crowd, "should have been impossible. Star Lions don't bond. They don't show submission. They're apex predators, driven by instinct, not emotion." He paused. "At least, that's what we thought. This child just proved that everything we believed about these creatures was wrong." Ambassador Tay arrived, running down the corridor. When he saw Hana, relief flooded his face. He rushed forward and swept her up in his arms, holding her like he would never let go. "You could have died," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Hana, you could have died." "But I didn't," Hana said. "Dad, he's not mean. He just needed someone to be kind to him." Tay looked at Kale. The Star Lion looked back. For a moment, human father and alien predator studied each other. Then, incredibly, Kale lowered his head slightly. "Not much, just a small dip of acknowledgement." "This changes everything," Dr. Yuna said softly. She was staring at Kale with wonder in her eyes. "If Star Lions can bond, if they're capable of this kind of connection, then we've fundamentally misunderstood them. And if we've misunderstood them, how many other species have we misjudged?" Over the next hour, KL was guided back to a containment area. But this time, it was different. The energy fields were set to low power, enough to keep him contained, but not to hurt him. The cell was larger, more comfortable. And most importantly, Hana was allowed to stay with him, sitting just outside the field where he could see her. Kale settled down, his body relaxed, his mane glowing that soft blue-green color. Every few minutes, he would look toward Hana, as if checking that she was still there. And each time, she would wave at him, and his mane would pulse a little brighter. Scientists descended on the facility in droves. Within hours, researchers from a dozen different species arrived, all wanting to study this unprecedented event. They brought scanners and sensors, recording devices and analysis equipment. They measured Kale's biosigns, studied his mane's color patterns, analyzed his behavior. What they found shocked them. "His stress hormones have dropped by 70%, one researcher announced, studying her datapad with disbelief. "His heart rate is stable. Brain activity shows patterns we've never seen in star lions before. Patterns that, in other species, we would associate with contentment, with happiness." "It doesn't make sense," another scientist said. "Star lions are solitary hunters. They don't form packs. They don't bond with mates beyond brief breeding periods. Social connection isn't part of their evolutionary programming." "Maybe we were wrong about their programming," Dr. Yuna said. She stood with her arms around Hana, watching Kale through the observation window. "Maybe they're capable of connection, but they never had the chance to develop it. Think about their world. Kethral is hostile to all life. Every creature there is fighting for survival every moment. There's no time for social bonding when you're constantly battling the environment and other predators. So you're saying they have the capacity for connection, but it's suppressed by their circumstances? A researcher asked. Exactly, Dr. Yuna said. And Hana gave him something he had never experienced before. Safety, kindness, trust, and he responded to it because somewhere in his biology, in his brain structure, he's capable of those feelings. We just never saw it before because no one ever tried. The news spread through Terminus 7 like wildfire. Within hours, every being on the station knew about the human child and the Star Lion. Crowds gathered outside the containment facility, hoping to catch a glimpse of Kale. The station's news feeds showed footage of Hana sitting with her hand against the energy field. Kale on the other side with his head pressed close to her palm. As close as the barrier would allow. Not everyone was impressed. Rixtal, the Scaleth merchant who had called humans prey, stood in the diplomatic plaza addressing a crowd. One moment of weakness from a captured animal doesn't change reality, he said, his voice carrying across the space. The child was lucky. That's all. Star lions are killers. Everyone knows this. One lucky encounter doesn't make humans special, but others disagreed. A Velen scientist, a being with translucent skin and 4 eyes, spoke passionately about the implications. For centuries, we've categorized species based on physical traits, strength, speed, natural weapons. We've assumed that these are the only things that matter in the galaxy. But what if we're wrong? What if the ability to connect, to empathize, to form bonds across species lines is just as powerful as any physical advantage? The debate raged across the station. In cafeterias and meeting rooms, in shops and living quarters, beings argued about what had happened. Some dismissed it as a fluke. Others saw it as a revelation. But everyone had an opinion. 3 days after the incident, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from 50 species gathered in the Great Council chamber. Ambassador Tay was summoned to speak, and he brought his family with him. Hana sat between her parents in the visitor section, feeling very small in the enormous room. The council leader, an ancient being who looked like living crystal, called the session to order. We have gathered to discuss the incident involving the human child and the Star Lion designated Kale, it said, its voice like wind chimes. This event raises important questions about human capabilities and their place in our galactic community. One by one, representatives spoke. Some praised humanity's unique ability to connect with other species. Others warned that relying on empathy was dangerous in a galaxy where many species operated on pure logic or hive mind principles. A representative from the Hive Collective, a species that shared one consciousness across millions of bodies, spoke in a voice that sounded like many people talking at once. We do not understand this individual connection. Our species succeeds through unity of purpose, not emotional bonds. How can humans survive if they waste resources on feelings? Ambassador Tay stood to respond. Feelings aren't a waste, he said. They're a tool. One that humans have used to survive and thrive on our world. We domesticated wolves and turned them into companions. We formed alliances with horses. We learned to read the emotions of other species and use that understanding to build partnerships. Yes, we're physically weak compared to many species, but we're strong in ways that don't show up on a scanner. Strength is strength, a military commander from the Kartoth Empire said. His species was built like walking tanks, covered in natural armor plating. Words don't stop plasma fire. Empathy doesn't win wars. Maybe not, Doctor, Yuna said, standing beside her husband. But empathy ends wars. It creates alliances. It turns enemies into friends. And in a galaxy as diverse as ours, isn't that valuable? The debate continued for hours. Finally, the council leader called for quiet. The human child will be brought forward, it announced. Hana's heart jumped. Her father squeezed her hand. You don't have to. If you don't want to, he whispered. It's okay, Hana said. I want to. She walked down the long aisle to the center of the chamber. Hundreds of eyes watched her, belonging to beings of every imaginable shape and size. She felt very small and very human, soft and weak and vulnerable in a room full of creatures that could break her with barely any effort. "Child," the council leader said, its crystalline face reflecting light in rainbow patterns. "You did something unprecedented. You connected with a creature that has never shown the capacity for bonding. How did you know to approach it the way you did?" Hana thought about the question. "I didn't really know," she said honestly. "I was really scared. But my mom taught me that animals act the way they do for reasons. They're not mean just to be mean. They're scared, or hungry, or protecting themselves." And Kael looked so sad in his cage. "So, I tried to show him that not everyone wanted to hurt him." "Were you not afraid?" another council member asked. "I was terrified," Hana admitted. "But being scared doesn't mean you can't be kind. Sometimes, the bravest thing is being kind, even when you're afraid." A murmur ran through the chamber. The council leader leaned forward. "Your species is weak by our standards. You have no natural defenses, yet you survived an encounter that would have killed most trained warriors. Do you understand why?" Hana shook her head. "Because you didn't treat the Star Lion as an enemy to defeat," the council leader said. "You treated it as a being to understand. That is a rare gift, child. Many species have lost that capacity in their evolution toward greater strength or intelligence. Perhaps your weakness is actually a strength we have overlooked." The session ended with no formal conclusions, but something had shifted. As Hana walked back to her parents, she could feel the change in how the other beings looked at her. Not with pity anymore, with something closer to respect, or maybe curiosity, or maybe just the beginning of understanding. 6 months had passed since the incident, and Terminus 7 had changed in ways both small and large. The most obvious change was Kael himself. The containment cell had been converted into something closer to a habitat. There were places to climb, areas that mimicked the harsh terrain of his home world, and most importantly, a door that could open to allow supervised interaction. Hana visited every day. Her parents had extended their diplomatic mission, partly because negotiations were going well, and partly because separating Hana from Kael seemed cruel to everyone involved. The Star Lion had bonded with her in ways that scientists still struggled to understand. When she wasn't there, his mane would fade to darker blues and purples. His behavior became restless, almost anxious. But the moment she appeared, his colors would shift to those bright greens and blues, and his entire demeanor would change. "It's remarkable," Dr. Yuna said, watching through the observation window, as Hana sat inside the habitat, Kael's head resting on her lap like it had that first day. "His brain chemistry literally changes when she's present. Oxytocin levels spike, stress hormones drop. It's the same biological response we see in bonded pairs of social species." Warden Thex stood beside her, his mechanical arm folded across his chest. "I've worked with dangerous creatures for 30 years, he said. "I've seen animals that could be trained, species that could be dominated, creatures that could be controlled through fear or reward. But I've never seen anything like this. This isn't training. This is genuine affection. It makes me wonder how many other species we've misunderstood," Dr. Yuna said softly. "How many creatures we've labeled as monsters, simply because we never tried to understand them." The story of the human child and the Star Lion had spread far beyond Terminus 7. It had been transmitted across the galactic network, discussed in scientific journals and news programs, debated in academic institutions and military academies across hundreds of worlds. Some species dismissed it as an anomaly. Others saw it as proof that humanity brought something unique to the galactic community. But the real test came when the Shriek-Tar crisis began. The Shriek-Tar were a hive-mind species from the far reaches of the galaxy. They communicated through ultrasonic frequencies that most species couldn't even hear, and their thought processes were completely alien to individual-minded beings. For years, They had been expanding their territory, and recently they had begun attacking colony worlds in the neutral zones. Every attempt at communication had failed. The Shriektar ignored all diplomatic overtures. They destroyed ships sent to negotiate. They seemed completely uninterested in anything except expansion. The Galactic Council had begun preparing for war, mobilizing fleets and calling up reserves from member species. Then Ambassador Tay made an unusual request. "Let us try," he said during a council session. "Let humanity attempt to communicate with the Shriektar before we commit to military action." The response was immediate and mostly negative. "You'll be slaughtered," the Kartoth military commander said bluntly. "The Shriektar don't negotiate. They don't communicate. They consume and expand. That's all they understand." "Maybe we haven't been listening the right way," Dr. Yuna said. "Maybe we've been trying to communicate with them based on our understanding of communication, not theirs." "It's suicide," Rixtal said. He had been quieter since the incident with Kale, but he still maintained that humans were too weak for the harsh realities of galactic politics. "The Shriektar will tear your ships apart. They'll take your people and integrate them into the hive. You'll lose everything." "We might." Ambassador Tay agreed. "But if there's even a chance we can avoid a war that will cost millions of lives, isn't it worth trying?" Also, after heated debate, the council agreed. A small human delegation would be sent to the Shriektar border. If they succeeded, war might be avoided. If they failed, well, the military options were already in place. Hana heard her parents discussing it late one night. She wasn't supposed to be listening, but her room shared a wall with the common area, and voices carried. "It's too dangerous," her father was saying. "We're talking about my family, about our daughter." "The council wants the whole family to go," her mother replied. "They think the image matters." The child who befriended the Star Lion, standing up for peace. "It's symbolic. She's 7 years old, Yuna. I won't risk her life for symbolism." "We're not asking you to." That was a new voice. Hana pressed her ear against the wall. It was the council leader, its chiming voice unmistakable. "But the child herself may choose. And there is another factor to consider. The Star Lion refuses to eat when the child is away for more than a day. If your family leaves the station, what happens to KL?" Hana didn't wait to hear more. She got out of bed, put on her robe, and walked into the common area. 3 adult faces turned to look at her. "I want to go," she said, "and Kale comes with us." Her father started to protest, but Hana held up her hand. "Dad, you taught me that sometimes you have to be brave, even when you're scared. You and Mom are going to try to stop a war. That's really important. And if Kale and I can help, then we should help." "The Shriektar are not Star Lions," the council leader said gently. "They may not respond to kindness the way Kale did." "Maybe not," Hana said. "But nobody thought Kale would respond either. Nobody thought it was possible. What if everyone is wrong about the Shriektar too?" 2 weeks later, a small human ship approached the Shriektar border. Aboard were Ambassador Tay, Dr. Yuna, Hana, and Kael. The Star Lion had been hesitant about the ship at first, but with Hana there, he had climbed aboard calmly. Now he lay in the cargo hold that had been converted into a temporary habitat, his mane glowing softly in the dim light. Also aboard were 3 human linguists, 2 xenobiologists, and a cultural specialist, plus a security team of 5, though everyone knew that 5 soldiers would make no difference if the Shriektar decided to attack. As they crossed into Shriektar space, alarms didn't sound. No weapons locked onto them, but the silence was somehow worse than an attack would have been. It felt like being ignored by something vast and incomprehensible. "They know we're here," one of the linguists said, studying sensor readings. "Our presence triggered responses in their communication frequencies. They're aware of us. They're just choosing not to respond." "Keep broadcasting," Ambassador Tay said. "All frequencies. Tell them we come in peace. Tell them we want to understand. They drifted deeper into Shriek-Tar space. Hours passed. Then, days. They sent messages constantly, but received no response. The crew began to wonder if this mission was pointless, if the Shriek-Tar simply didn't care about anything outside their hive mind. On the third day, something changed. The ship's sensors detected movement. Massive movement. A Shriek-Tar vessel appeared on their screens, emerging from behind a moon. It was organic, grown rather than built, covered in plates that looked like insect carapace. It was easily 50 times the size of their small diplomatic ship. "They're scanning us," the pilot said, her voice tight with tension. "I'm reading multiple sensor sweeps. They're analyzing everything about us." "Don't take defensive positions," Ambassador Tay ordered. "Maintain peaceful posture. Keep broadcasting." The Shriek-Tar ship moved closer. It didn't fire, didn't attack, just observed. For 6 hours it hung in space beside them, its sensor sweeps constant and thorough. Then a message came through. Not in words. The Shriek-Tar didn't use words. It was a series of ultrasonic pulses, mathematical patterns, chemical signatures, transmitted as data. The linguists worked frantically to decode it. "They're asking why we're here," one of them finally said. "But it's not really a question. It's more like, they're asking what function we serve, what purpose. The hive doesn't understand individual motivation." "Tell them we seek to prevent conflict," Ambassador Tay said. "Tell them we want to find a way for our species to coexist." More pulses were sent. More hours passed. The translation was slow and difficult. The Shriek-Tar thought in ways that individual minds struggled to comprehend. But gradually, communication began. The Shriek-Tar didn't attack colonies because they were evil or cruel. They didn't even really understand the concept of other beings as individuals. To the hive mind, everything was resources and functions. They expanded because expansion was their biological imperative, the way breathing was for humans. They consumed because they needed materials to grow. "They don't hate us," Dr. Yuna said, reading the translations with growing understanding. "They don't think of us at all. We're just obstacles, resources, functions that need to be absorbed into the greater whole." "How do we negotiate with that?" a security officer asked. "How do you find common ground with a species that doesn't even recognize you as a person?" "We show them," Hannah said. She had been quiet through most of the journey, but now she spoke up. "We show them what they're destroying. We help them understand what individuals are." "How?" her father asked. Hannah looked at Kale. The Star Lion had been restless, pacing the cargo hold. He could sense the tension in the ship, and it made him anxious. But when Hannah came down to see him, he always calmed. "We show them Kale and me," she said. "We show them a bond, something that can't exist in a hive mind, something unique to individuals." It was risky. It was strange, but nobody had a better idea. So they sent a request to the Shriek-Tar vessel. They asked for a meeting, an exchange, individual to hive. The Shriek-Tar agreed, though their agreement was more like curiosity. They wanted to study this odd behavior. They wanted to understand this unusual function. A connection was established between the ships. Not a physical connection, but a data bridge. Information could flow both ways. And through it, the humans transmitted something unprecedented. They sent sensory data, images and sounds, chemical readings, and biological information. They showed the Shriek-Tar what it looked like when Hannah approached Kael for the first time. They showed the fear, the courage, the moment of connection. They transmitted Kael's biological changes, the shift in brain chemistry, the way his behavior transformed, and they sent something else. They sent Hannah's perspective, what it felt like to be one small being, scared and alone, reaching out to another being who was also scared and alone. The moment of recognition. The choice to trust instead of fear. The Shriektar received this data and were silent for a long time. The hive mind processed information differently than individual minds. It took patterns and experiences and integrated them into its vast collective understanding. When they finally responded, their message was different than before. Less mechanical, more curious. They want to know if all individuals experience this, the linguist translated. They want to know if connection is a universal function of individual consciousness. Yes, Doctor, Yuna sent back. Every species that exists as individuals has the capacity for connection. It's fundamental to how we survive. We're not strong alone. We're strong together. More silence. More processing. Then the Shriektar sent coordinates. An uninhabited system on their border. And they sent a proposal. Translated slowly and carefully by the exhausted linguists. The Shriektar would stop their expansion into inhabited systems. They would establish borders and respect them. In exchange, they wanted something. They wanted to learn about individual consciousness. They wanted to study how beings that existed as separate entities could function, could build civilizations, could form connections across species lines. It was unprecedented. It was bizarre. But it was peace. The news reached Terminus 7 and spread across the galaxy within hours. The humans had done it. They had negotiated with the unnegotiable. They had found common ground with a species so alien that most beings couldn't even conceive of their thought processes. Hana returned to the station a hero. But she didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired and glad to be home. Kyle seemed to feel the same way. His mane glowed bright green as they walked through the familiar corridors, back toward his habitat. Rixtal was waiting in the plaza. The Scaleth merchant who had called humans prey so many months ago. He looked at Hana for a long moment, his scaled face unreadable. "I was wrong about your species," he said finally. "I thought strength was all that mattered. Claws, and fangs, and armor. But you've shown us something different. You've shown us that understanding is its own kind of strength. Perhaps the most important kind. We're still weak," Hana said honestly. "We're still soft. We still can't survive most worlds without protection." "Yes," Rixtal agreed. "But you can survive anywhere by making friends. Even with creatures that shouldn't be friends. Even with species that think in ways we can barely understand. That is not weakness. That is power of a kind we never recognized before." Years would pass. Hana would grow up on Terminus 7, with Kale always by her side. She would become the youngest member of the Galactic Council at age 16. She would found the Empathy Corps, an organization dedicated to building bridges between species. She would help negotiate peace treaties, resolve conflicts, and teach other beings the art of seeing past their assumptions. But she would always remember that first day. Standing in a corridor with a star lion who everyone said was a mindless killer. The moment she chose kindness over fear. The moment Kale chose trust over instinct. The galaxy still had its wars. It still had conflicts and violence and species that couldn't understand each other. But it also had something new. It had humans, the soft, weak prey species, showing everyone that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is reach out your hand to someone who's afraid. They had called humans prey. They had dismissed them as weak, as soft, as insignificant. But humanity had proven something more important than strength. They had proven that empathy, understanding, and the courage to see past fear could change the galaxy itself. And it had all started with one little girl and a star lion who just needed a friend.